ربي يا الله الله يا ربي يا الله الله يا ربي يا الله.
Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak. Hello and welcome to the Health Show and a Ramadan special series here only on the Islam channel with me, Alistair Greener. During the month of Ramadan, Muslims fast every day from dawn to sunset. It's a time of spiritual discipline, of deep contemplation of one's relationship with Allah. This includes extra prayer, increased charity and generosity, and intense study of the Holy Quran. And for those fasting this month, we're going to guide you on how to remain healthy throughout the month. We're going to bring you a 4-part special programme covering health issues that relate to fasting, with the help and advice from experts who have appeared on one of our weekly health shows over the 2 seasons. The topics we'll be focusing on will be eating healthily and weight loss, fasting in Ramadan, women's health, and positive mental health. On today's show, we're delving into eating healthily and weight loss. Now, fasting during Ramadan can be good for your health if it's done correctly. If you're overweight, it can be an opportunity to lose weight, provided you eat healthily when you break your fast. To talk more about today's topic, it's great to welcome back Dr. Nazia Rashid, a qualified general practitioner, to tell us more. With over 9 years' experience, Dr. Rashid is involved heavily in health promotion and charity work, both in the UK and overseas. Close to home, she has been on various health committees and has been involved in GP selection assessments for many years. Welcome back. Lovely to see you again.
Thank you for having me back.
And it's an interesting time, isn't it, Ramadan? Because it's all about the mind, body and soul, and it's a great opportunity to really reflect on our lives and look at how we're looking after our health, and certainly when it comes to weight loss and healthy eating. First of all, though, I'd like to ask, just from a personal point of view, about Ramadan and for you and how you spend Ramadan and what you do differently during Ramadan.
So I do end up having to work during Ramadan. It's quite useful, especially if you have Muslim patients and they need to take medication. I can always advise them how to change their medication. But I usually try and make time for prayer, extra prayers, so I can adjust my surgery. So usually, I think in the UK we're quite lucky because there's a lot of awareness about Ramadan, and a lot of the surgeries that I work at are quite flexible and they can give me flexible timings. So
and that's great for you and also for patients as well, the fact that there is this greater awareness of Ramadan, so definitely. That anybody going to see medical experts, the chances are they will have a greater knowledge about the various involvement that people have with Ramadan and how it can affect their medication and health generally.
Yeah, Ramadan I find is it's also a time for family. So when you're opening your fast, often in this busy life, we're always rushing around, and you never get time to even eat with your family. But especially with the long fast coming up, you end up having some time, and you actually take that time and you can eat with friends and family. So it's a time to get together as well and reflect.
Now, we talked there in the introduction about actually it's a great opportunity during Ramadan to adjust your habits and actually maybe lose a few pounds. The temptation, of course, is when you break your fast is just to go for it. So what are your tips to be able to help people control themselves when they get to the end of their fast and they're just dying just to tuck into a big meal? How would you suggest that they control themselves, and what are the tips to help them?
I think hydration is very important. So if you look at your stomach, there's only so much a stomach can take. So if when you open your fast, often it's customary to have dates, but if you open your fast and you have a lot of water as well, then that will help with regards to your with hydration, and also with regards to weight loss, if that's one of your aims as well. Which I think is with the long fast and the reduced calories that people usually end up taking, the reduced calories, that you do end up losing more weight. So I think hydration, just having the water first before you go and tuck into your meal, because you'll be more full with the water, and then you'll notice that you probably eat less, even if it is unhealthy.
And likewise, to stay hydrated, what you don't want to do is to fill your stomach with food, so actually there's no room for water afterwards.
Yeah, definitely, because that often happens. And then often what happens is we pray afterwards, and then it's really difficult to even pray if you've done that. So the most important thing I can advise people is to try and have water before your meal.
Great tip. And what about the food itself? Because we talked again in the introduction that this is an opportunity to really develop better habits, better
100%.
lifestyles, and it's often an opportunity, isn't it, to really reflect on what we're doing.
Yeah.
So what type of things would you suggest people actually start thinking about during Ramadan in terms of their general health and well-being, about habits that they can maybe keep up for the future?
Yeah, so when I think about food, I think it's quite important to maybe tell the public about the glycemic index and make them aware of what that means. So basically, glycemic index is the ability of foods to control your blood sugar after you've had that certain food. So, for example, if you have a food that makes your blood sugar spike, so something sugary drinks or sweets, and makes your blood sugar spike, then that's not ideal, because your blood sugar will spike and then it will go down. What you really need to do is have foods that will make your blood sugar, make sure that your blood sugar doesn't spike and
It's
your
almost
blood
like a
sugar
slow
stable.
release.
Yeah. So those foods are things like whole grains. Oats are very good as well. If you are going to have rice, then basmati rice is probably the best. So foods that have a low glycemic index are ideal. I think there's a lot of information, even on NHS Choice's website, there's a lot of information about this. So if anybody does want some information, then they can go to that website.
And what about, the different fruit and things? Because people think, actually, I want to be healthier, I need to be having more fruit and vegetables and things.
I think even if you add in with your meal, your main meal, let's say you have some protein, some carbs, but if you have a lot of salad, that's always quite useful. Also, you don't notice, but with salad, you get the water in the cucumber, you get water in the tomato, so you are hydrating yourself in that sense. And watermelon is quite good, because that can be quite hydrating as well. I think it's quite important to emphasize the hydration, because there's such long fasts and you don't want to dehydrate.
And especially given the time of year as well, it can be hot, it can, it is a challenge, especially with the very long days. So it's a long fast at this time of year. And so hydration, really important. And you recommend for hydration just plain water, or what about other drinks?
Water's fine. I know some people don't actually like the taste of water, so if they put juice like cordial or fruit juice, that's fine. But I think that's probably the best thing, because if you have fizzy drinks, they're not ideal, and also it's what we call empty calories. So you're having, let's say you have a fizzy drink which has got maybe 100 or 200 calories. That's 200 calories you've wasted on a fizzy drink, when you could have had something that you really like, actually.
Makes perfect sense. And one of the things you talked about hydration there, and obviously we don't want people to be in any form of danger by being dehydrated. So for somebody who maybe hasn't had enough fluid during the period in between the fastings, and they wind up maybe feeling unwell during the day, there's that balance, isn't there? Because, much as you want to keep your fast and maintain it, your health obviously comes first, and you just might have to break your fast just to be able to, remain healthy.
Yeah, so there are people who really shouldn't be fasting, pregnant women who are breastfeeding, because they will need that, those extra calories just so that they can get through the day. And certain people, certain diabetics, actually, that's a story. I think, a show in itself, really.
Yeah.
So people who are essentially type 1 diabetics, they shouldn't really be fasting, because they require the insulin. And people who are on glycoside, but often some people, they're very keen, type 2 diabetics who are diet controlled, and they want to fast. And actually, sometimes it does improve their diabetic control. But it's really important that they're aware of if they get dehydrated or if their blood sugar goes low, then it is really important that they talk to a medical professional, and they can advise, whether they think it's necessary for them to break the fast. It can be quite upsetting, but
isn't it?
Yeah, your health is really important.
And we've talked earlier on about how there's now a greater understanding within the NHS and the medical community of Ramadan and the requirements, and therefore, if you are in any doubt, just speak to your doctor or GP, and they'll be able to guide you.
And I can speak from personal experience. So I think once I fasted, I think it was a few years ago, I fasted during the summer. I thought, why not, let's try a fast. But unfortunately, I was silly enough not to have my dawn meal, which everybody should learn from. Definitely have your dawn meal. And I ended up my blood sugar became quite low. And I was lucky because I was just about to open the fast. It was about 8, 9 o'clock. And I was able to open my fast. But it was not the ideal thing to do. So I think the importance of getting up at dawn and having that meal is just so important, especially even if you don't want to have food, just getting water and hydrating yourself, just having something like that to keep you going. Really.
One of the anomalies of Ramadan is that, as we said in the beginning, it's an opportunity to lose weight, it's an opportunity to get healthier. However, there are some people who actually wind up gaining weight.
Yeah. What's
going wrong with that picture?
Well, it's all, when you want to lose weight or even gain, it's all to do with calories. So if you want to lose weight, they advise that a man should basically have 1,900 calories, a woman should have about 1,400 calories. So if you're having more than that, then you're more likely to gain weight. So it depends on what they're eating. And also sometimes if you're eating late at night and you're not burning those calories, then you're more likely to put the weight on as well. So you have to be careful. You can still, a lot of people, I think, do lose weight during Ramadan because they're so used to having 3 meals, and reducing down to 2 lighter meals, they do end up losing weight.
But that's the real key, isn't it? Lighter meals.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is really good to talk about is meal planning.
Yeah, definitely.
Making sure that you are eating the right things when you break your fast. You talked there earlier on about oats and whole grains, things that are going to give you that slow release of energy. What other kind of foods would it be a good thing, generally, because some people's diets aren't the healthiest. When we look at some of the great foods that we all love, they're not necessarily always the healthiest. So what are your top tips to make some slow transitions and maybe use Ramadan as that opportunity, so it's fun, it's still you're with the family, but they're actually a little bit healthier for you?
I think I'm realistic. I know I've seen many patients who, and I'm very realistic about what people can achieve. So I think even if you try and reduce the unhealthy food that you're going to have, I know a lot of people will have unhealthy food, they'll have fried foods, but if you try and reduce that and increase the healthy food that you're having, so just portion control is really important. If you can take that with you and do that during Ramadan, and it is a whole month, so usually when people pick up a habit, if you've done it, apparently there's a saying, if you've done it for 40 days, then it becomes a habit. So that's only an extra 10 days afterwards, but it's just controlling your portions. I'm very realistic that people will want nice food and they fasted, and often it's an excuse, I fasted all day and I really want to have this food. But just if you do, then just reduce how much you're having and increase the amount of healthy food that you're having.
And don't dive into a buffet straight away afterwards. No. One of the things that we all know, to lose weight, it's basically what you put in versus what you put out.
Definitely.
In other words, how much exercise you're taking.
Oh, yeah.
Now, during Ramadan, obviously you've got these long periods where you are not eating at all. So obviously that's going to mean that maybe your energy could take a bit of a dip. What are your recommendations about exercise and just going about your normal daily life, especially maybe if you've got a more physical job that does normally require energy? How do you suggest people get through that but maintain that sort of activity still?
It's the same advice I'd give to a lady who's fallen pregnant and then decides she wants to take up exercise. There's not many people I've met who do usually want to take up exercise during Ramadan. It's what your body's used to. So if you're a person who exercises regularly every single day and this is what you're used to, then your body can tolerate. It knows what it can tolerate. Whereas if you're somebody who wants to take up exercise during Ramadan, I would not recommend that because your body's not used to it. So it's not going to be ideal for you. You're pushing yourself to the limits, and it's not what I would advise. If you do want to, then I would say go for a short stroll just before you're going to open your fast or after you open your fast, which will help to digest your food. And actually that's probably the what you can do to help make sure that you carry on.
No, obviously, yeah, everyone's going to have a different view on exercise, but as you're saying there, this is just if it's new to you, then just, this isn't the opportunity. It's like sometimes people have New Year's resolutions, don't they? And they go all out and they go absolutely crazy. But of course, not only is it a bit of a shock to the system, but it's not sustainable. That's not something you're going to stick to.
Even athletes, I know that they reduce their, if they're fasting, they'll reduce their amount of exercise that they do, and these are athletes. So you have to, when you're fasting, you have to really bear this in mind, because you don't want to become hypoglycemic, which is when you get your blood sugar goes really low, you get sweaty, tremors, you feel a bit confused. You don't want to get to that stage, because you end up having to break your fast. So just being sensible, and always there's always lots of resources. You can speak to your doctor. Personal trainers are quite good. If you're a part of a gym, then you can speak to the personal trainer there, and they can advise you. But if you are somebody who does exercises, then I would say usually they're quite well aware, and they usually reduce their exercises and do very light exercise. But it's not something that, aerobic activities are not ideal in Ramadan. You're already
and especially with the heat and everything else.
Yes,
Now, one of the
definitely.
questions I know that came up when we did this, the Ramadan series a year or so ago. One of the questions that came in, which we never got a chance to answer on air, was about a little bit of a sensitive one, but during fasting, sometimes people found that their breath wasn't quite as fresh as it would be normally. First of all, what causes that? And B, what can people do about it?
So usually it's to do with, there's a lot of different causes of bad breath. Sometimes it can be dental issues, so always go to your dentist. Often it can be your stomach. There's usually an underlying problem with your stomach, so that's always useful. But during Ramadan, it's usually because you're so dehydrated that's the reason why you end up getting what we call halitosis, which is the bad breath. So just keeping yourself hydrated and avoiding that is quite important, and that's why it's so important to have the meal before you the dawn meal, before you start your fast. So just doing that will help, definitely.
Having plenty of liquid.
Yes,
and in your opinion, do you think that, let's say, for example, somebody does feel during the day they're at work or something and they suddenly realise they might be a little bit dehydrated, they do feel that their breath isn't as fresh as it could be. Is it permissible to go and brush your teeth, to put some mouthwash or something like that? Is there anything that you can do, or is it, if you're being strict to your fast, actually you've got to not do anything and make sure you hydrate better the next time?
I think there's a difference of opinion, and some people will brush their teeth, other people don't. I know the vast majority usually don't brush their teeth. But you can always rinse your mouth out. There's no harm in rinsing your mouth out with water, because we have to do that often before we pray. We have to do our ablutions, so we're rinsing our mouth out, and there's no harm in doing that, because at least that will hydrate your mouth.
And you're not ingesting, so
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's always a good tip, because we have patients sometimes and they're nil by mouth, but we're not cruel. We won't tell them you can't have anything. And often we give them like little sponges to try and keep the mouth moist, so that helps.
So again, brushing your teeth, not necessarily the worst thing, as long as you don't ingest.
Yeah, definitely. And people can gargle, but often it depends how good you are at gargling and your gargling skills. So that depends on that. So if you don't ingest, then obviously it's okay to rinse your mouth out.
And I think a lot of this, from what I've been, when we speak to other people who are very well versed in what one should or shouldn't do during Ramadan, a lot of this seems to come down to your relationship with Allah and how you are with Allah, and therefore making up or whatever. And it's that relationship that seems to be crucial here.
Yeah, so I think it's a time for you to connect with your Lord, Allah, and also it's a time to reflect. So often you can think, often people pray and they'll ask for something, but I think also a time to be grateful is really the most important thing, and it's one of the things that fasting. They say in our religion that you do everything for yourself, but fasting you do for the sake of God. So He will reward you on the Day of Judgment with regards to your fasting. So just if you really love someone, you'd want to do something for them. So I think that just doing the act of fasting is quite an important act of worship. But also I think being grateful for what you have, because often, when you're fasting, you don't realise how lucky we are with food and everything that we have at our fingertips, really.
When you're talking to your clients and you're talking to them about generally better health and things, are there any things that you say during Ramadan, you know what, this is a great opportunity to try X, Y or Z, or, why not try it now where you do this, where it's something which isn't major, but it's something that actually can have long-term benefits, and this is the perfect time to start it?
Yeah, so for example, smoking, I always try and encourage people, because often during Ramadan people can't smoke, so they don't smoke, and they don't actually they actually stop smoking during that month. So I say, well, continue it. You've done it for a month, so that's a really good opportunity.
And we talked about habit forming
Yes.
before, and if you manage 30 days, you know,
Yeah.
you're on the way. Yeah.
There's also something called, it's quite common in some of the Asian communities, is when women chew pan or men chew pan, and it's called betel nut. So they'll stop that. So that's always a good opportunity because it can cause mouth cancer. So we try and encourage people to stop that as well and just continue that habit. I think it's just because people are used to something.
Yeah.
But often people say, it was so easy. I didn't even miss the smoking. Or I didn't even miss the pan. And I say, well, it's good. You can carry it on.
And one of the things that has come up before is shisha.
Yes. So that's actually quite. So that's actually quite. It's quite an emotive topic in the sense that actually shisha, the amount of how harmful it is for you, because people often think shisha is fine, but smoking is not, but actually that's not the case. So I would say, reduce your visits to the shisha lounge. Definitely. I don't know how the businesses will feel, but definitely that's what I would advise.
Well, we're here to talk about people's health, not look after their businesses. So, again, time has run away with us, but I'd like to finish off really by just giving some final top tips, maybe some foods, type of liquids people should have, some new good habits that people could take the opportunity to do during this time. I'm putting you a little bit on the spot, but maybe give us a few of your top tips of how to improve your lifestyle during Ramadan.
So I think definitely keep yourself hydrated. That's one of my top tips, and have the dawn meal and make sure you have drinking plenty of water. Reduce the amount of fatty foods that you're having. Try and choose foods that have a low glycemic index, and what they do is release the blood sugar slowly. And also give up your bad habits is what I would say if you can, and try and sustain that after Ramadan.
Because the thing is that, you know, it is a time for family, and there's plenty of foods and liquids that one can drink which are actually good for you, that you can still have a party.
You can still have lots of fruit and vegetables, and what you can do with lots of fruits, and it's amazing. There's so many recipes and vegetables and protein and even, like, for example, peppers with couscous, or I can give you lots of recipes. I think that's another show. I think that's a cookery show, really.
Well, by the way, that's great, because sometimes people, you know, we've talked before about people when they come to the end of the fast, and it's a great opportunity for the family to spend some real quality time together. And I know that often families want to put on something very special, have special dishes and things. But actually, you don't have to stick to the foods that you're very used to as being the foods that you would normally have to these occasions. But actually, if with a bit of creativity, and there's a lot of cookbooks out there, there's a lot of advice on how to cook healthily, and actually it tastes great. Yeah,
definitely. There's so much out there. And so I would say just try different recipes. Yeah. It's a good opportunity to try a different recipe. Just follow the recipe.
There you go. Get a new recipe book for Ramadan.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much indeed. That's been brilliant. So there you have it, some important and really helpful advice on staying healthy whilst maintaining a well-balanced diet. We hope that this has helped you look after your weight and develop good eating habits for Ramadan. Now, we must stress that should you suffer from any medical problems, it's always highly recommended that you contact your doctor or GP, as the Health Show Ramadan Special gives you an alternative viewpoint to the health concern being discussed. I'd like to thank our expert today, Dr. Nazia Rashid, general practitioner, for coming onto the show. And if you'd like to find out more about today's topic, or would like to get in touch with our expert, or even find out some of those recipes, then please do email us at healthshow@islamchannel.tv. Join me next week, where we'll be discussing respiratory systems, fasting, and common medical conditions such as asthma, cardiovascular disease and diabetes. But for now, goodbye, and we'll see you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Allahu, Allahu, ya Rabbi, ya Allah. Allahu, ya Rabbi, ya Allah. Allahu, Allahu, ya Rabbi, ya Allah. Allahu, ya Rabbi, ya Allah.
محمد رسول